Let's begin with a story that is as old as consciousness itself.
You know, it's this universal quest, a search for meaning, for something bigger than ourselves. It's a story we all recognize. But what if the answer that came back wasn't the one humanity was hoping for?
Because according to this story, the beings that finally answered that call, well, they weren't divine creators at all. They were something else entirely, something that doesn't feed on offerings, but on the mind itself.
So, right up front, this isn't about tearing down belief. It's about asking questions about its foundation. And it all starts with understanding just what this antagonist really is.
So you see, the monster here, it isn't physical. It's an idea. A being that's literally sustained by what we think, what we're afraid of, and what we choose to believe. The real battleground isn't some field on Earth. It's consciousness itself.
Okay, so if these parasites feed on belief, then how is that belief created in the first place? How does something that sounds like a promise turn into a prison?
Well, they didn't show up with armies or brute force. No, their conquest was much more subtle. It was intellectual. They presented themselves as the answer to all of humanity's deepest questions, and they used the very forms people expected a god to take, light, sacred voices, ancient wisdom. They offered a grand plan, a purpose for everything.
And the deal they offered? It was simple. Obedience in exchange for salvation. A really powerful promise, and one that became the absolute cornerstone of their control.
This brings us right to the heart of it all. The mechanics of a prison you can't even see. I mean, how does a system of control like that actually work?
And this is where we find their fundamental weakness. You see, all that immense power they seem to have, it wasn't really theirs. It was borrowed. It was just a reflection of humanity's own belief, its fear, and its obedience. Without those things, they were nothing. And understanding that dependency is the key to the whole system.
So to protect this fragile existence, they used a three-step strategy. First, you mix just enough truth in with the lies to make it all seem believable. Second, you redefine the very act of asking questions as a moral failing. You call it a sin. And third, you make it dangerous, socially, psychologically, to even think for yourself. Because an awakened mind, well, that was their extinction.
Now there's a really important distinction we have to make here. A person in physical chains knows they're a slave, it's obvious. But when the chains are made of ideas, of dogma, of fear, the slave might not even know they're in a prison. They might actually defend its walls thinking it's a sanctuary.
But every system of control, no matter how perfect it seems, has a flaw. And in this story, the flaw wasn't some weapon or a big revolution. It was something much simpler and way more powerful. It was a child's question. So simple, but it cuts right to the heart of the entire contradiction. If the mind is a gift from a creator, why would that same creator forbid us from using it? That single question, that was the first crack in a wall that seemed like it could never be broken. Because a question like that, a foundational question, once it's asked, you can't unask it. And just like that, the whole illusion starts to come apart.
And the first sign of weakness shows up. As doubt starts to creep in, that divine light, the one fueled by unquestioning belief, it starts to fade.
Then, their message, which was once so unified and absolute, it starts to fracture. When you put it under a microscope, the sacred voices just can't keep their story straight. And finally, the whole narrative just collapses. The stories, the histories, the prophecies, none of it fits together anymore. The grand illusion just falls apart.
This right here, this is the moment of collective awakening. Humanity realizes that a truly divine being wouldn't need a negative emotion like fear just to survive. Any power that demands fear isn't divine, it's just a predator.
So what happens after the fall of the parasites? What comes next? Well, the aftermath is what reveals the ultimate lesson of the story.
There wasn't some epic battle or a massive war. Their end was just as quiet and, ethereal as their existence had been. The moment the fuel, that belief, was taken away, they just ceased to be. They dissolved, revealing they were never really solid in the first place.
And the story leaves humanity not with a new set of gods to follow, but with a single profound responsibility. It suggests that the ultimate freedom is the freedom of your own mind, and the ultimate duty is to protect it from any authority that demands blind obedience over truth you can actually verify. Which brings us to a final thought.
The most effective deceptions, the biggest lies, they don't announce themselves as lies. They wrap themselves in the highest possible authority they can find, an authority that's designed to be beyond question.
And that really is the whole point. This story isn't about giving you answers. It's about encouraging all of us to ask better questions. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I am here to ask you, why?